Imina 36 na legislature in Guam is called to order. We begin with a prayer. Senator Torres, will you please lead us in prayer?
Ginani Tata Lihina Deni Spiritu Santo, Amen. Heavenly Father, we offer this prayer today for all the victims of gun violence, for the wars in Europe, and for those of us within the halls who have lost loved ones within our families, particularly our good colleague, Clint Ridgell. We ask you, Lord, in the words of St. Francis of Assisi, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. God, grant us the peace within our hearts and our minds as we cope with all the devastation and the challenges that we are now facing as a country, as a world, as an island, and also our personal struggles within these hallowed halls of the legislature. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. In Tata Lehina Deni Spiritu Santo.
Thank you, Senator Torres. We will now proceed with the recognition of a recipient of Imaladan Mastakilu na Sacrificio. Vice Speaker Munya Barnes, you are recognized.
On behalf of a grateful island and country, we honor Staff Sergeant David Guerrero Benavente and the family of Staff Sergeant David Guerrero Benavente for making the ultimate sacrifice in service and defense of our island and country.
For the recitation of Inifresi, will Senator Brown kindly lead us? Oh, sorry, will Senator Taitui kindly lead us?
Inifresi, Inimestakilu, Gihenasoku, Imestakilu, Yikunasonhu, Zanimasfigo, Ninian Senyahu, Iun Fraisen Maisuju, Parabahutehi, Zanhun Defendi, Ihengi, Ikatura, Ilenguahi, Iari, Ihanam Tamoru. Nivirin Shoku Teretu, Ginanatu Ustata, Estihu Afitmia, Gihulu Biblia, Zanbanadehu, Zanbanaderen Guahan.
For the singing of the Guam hymn in Chamorro, would Senator Duenas kindly lead us, and would Senator Blas kindly lead us in the singing of the national anthem?
Vanogi Chamorro, Puritanota, Canta Mantunanya Nitodu Ilugar. Para y honra, para y gloria, aviva y islas en para. Para y honra, para y gloria, aviva y islas en para. Todo y tempo y paz, para hita, zangin ni langit na bendición. Contra peligro, nafan sa fuham, Zeus protegis lan Guam. Contra peligro, nafan sa fuham, Zeus Deus protegis Guam. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched, and so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Senators. Good morning. Madam Clerk, please take roll call.
Senator Atta, Senator Blas, Senator Brown, Senator Duenas, Senator Moylan, Vice Speaker Muñoz-Barnes, Senator Nelson, Senator Perez, Senator Rangel, Senator San Augustine, Senator Shelton, Senator Titagui, Senator Terlahi, Speaker Terlahi, Senator Torres. Madam Speaker, there is a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Vice Speaker Muñoz-Barnes, you are recognized.
Si Dios masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to approve the Legislative Journal dated April 22nd, 2022, subject to corrections.
On the motion to approve the Legislative Journal dated April 22, subject to corrections, are there any objections?
No objection.
Seeing no objection, motion carries. Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are communications and petitions, and I move that they be appended to today's session journal.
On the motion that communications and petitions be appended to today's session journal, are there any objections?
No objections.
Seeing no objections, motion carries. Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, there are messages from Imagahagan Guahan, and I move that they be appended to today's session journal.
On that motion that the messages from Imagahagan Guahan be appended to today's session journal, are there any objections?
No objection.
Seeing no objections, motion carries. Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, there are reports of standing committees, and I move that they be appended to today's session journal.
On the motion that reports of standing committees be appended to today's session journal, are there any objections?
No objection.
Seeing no objection, motion carries. Are there any reports of select committees? Vice
Madam Speaker, there are no reports of select committees.
All right, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that bills introduced, bills number 292-36LS, 293-36COR, and 294-36COR, 295-36LS through 301-36LS and 302-36COR through 304-36COR, and resolutions introduced, resolution numbers 321-36LS through 324-36LS, 325-36COR through 331-36COR, 332-36LS through 339-36LS and 340-36COR through 348-36COR be deemed to have been given their first reading.
On the motion, are there any objections? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We are now under motions. We are now in motions. Senators, Vice Speaker Munya-Barnes, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to excuse senators not present for today's legislative session.
On that motion, are there any objections? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, I move that all congratulatory, commendatory, and condolence resolutions introduced today and for the remainder of this legislative session be considered first read and adopted, and to allow Legislative Council to make technical corrections and to add all senators as co-sponsor.
On that motion, are there any objections? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Titano, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, and good morning to my colleagues, or almost good afternoon. Madam Speaker, we are still in motions, and at this time I would like to place on the, in the third reading file, vetoed bill number 239-36, an act to add a new 76206 to Article 2 of Chapter 76, Division 3, Title 11, Guam Code Annotated, and to add a new 13510 to Article 5 of Chapter 13, Title 19, Guam Code Annotated, relative to the business license requirement for entities engaging in child placement services. And I would like to place this item on the agenda for potential, for consideration of the body.
Okay.
Notwithstanding any.
All right, so we are on motions, and so the motion is to place, notwithstanding the objections of Imeka Hagan Guahan, motion to act on vetoed bill.
Yes,
All right.
Madam Speaker.
All right, would you like to discuss it?
At this time,
Please proceed.
At this time, Madam Speaker, if I could, I'd like to do so toward the end of the second reading or the third reading. I'd like to bring it to the body at that time.
We'll take a 1-minute recess.
Thank you.
We're back from recess. We will come back to Senator Titano under motions. Are there any other motions? Senator San Augustine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I motion to reconsider the action of the body on Bill 197-36CR, introduced by myself, co-sponsored by Senator Amanda Shelton, Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munya-Barnes, Senator Jose Pito Terlai, Senator Frank Blas, Senator Jim Mullins, Senator Clint Rigel, Senator Talina Cruz Nelson, as amended and further amended by the Committee on General Government Appropriation and Housing, an act to appropriate $5 million from the General Fund to the University of Guam for the purpose of providing additional financial support toward the construction of the Student Service Center and the School of Engineering buildings.
On the motion to On the motion to reconsider the actions of the body on Bill 197, Bill 197-36 COR, as amended by the committee. Are there any objections, notwithstanding the rules, to the motion to reconsideration? Hearing no objection, motion carries.
Madam
Wait,
Speaker.
what? I didn't hear one. All in favor of the motion to reconsider Bill number 197-36 COR as amended by the committee,
Point
please
of
raise
order,
your
Madam
hand.
Speaker. There should be a motion to consider the actions of the presiding officer at this time because you already gavelled us down. So I'd like for you to make that motion. That's okay, Madam Speaker. Just stating the point of information on the rules as per the standing rules.
Point of information, Madam Speaker, there was an objection before you gavelled down. I guess you
Right.
just didn't hear it. Yeah.
Madam
That's
Speaker,
correct.
if I
I
may.
didn't hear the objection that was made. So we are just, there is an objection. Yes, and the last time I did that, there was a huge objection to it. So we are going to deal with it right now before it becomes a bigger issue. So
Madam Chair,
There
if
is
I
a
may,
motion to
based
reconsider.
on a point of information on the standing rules, if you need me to quote it, I will quote it. The gavel has been pounded, so the motion to reconsider the actions as motioned and approved by the speaker should be motioned next to reconsider the actions of the gavel.
I'll take that as a point of order. Yes,
I
is
just
there
want
a
to
point
relay,
of
Madam
order?
Speaker, I did say objection twice. I gather the first time you didn't hear me, but I did say it twice, and the second time you heard me. You know, fair is fair. I mean, when it
Thank
benefits
you.
one side,
Thank you,
it's always,
Senator.
you know, an
I've already
objection.
said, we are on the motion to the motion notwithstanding the rules, to reconsider the actions of the body on Bill number 197-36 COR as amended and further amended by the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations, and Housing. There's been an objection, so all in favor, please raise your hand. All in favor of reconsideration. Motion fails. We're still on motions.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator
Colleagues,
Sinagra.
I move to place on the session agenda Bill 301-36 LS, introduced by myself as amended by the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture, an act to approve the second amended and reinstated land lease agreement between Guam Power Authority and the Guam Ukadu Power LLC as lenders conditioned to fund the construction of a 198 megawatt power plant and BESS facility located on lot numbers 5010-1 new-1 and 5101 new-R1 Dedadu, and a related reserve facility located on lot number 261-2 PD Guam, and to authorize the use of those properties for such purposes. The committee report was filed and uploaded on Wednesday, May 25th, and it was also addressed and as one of the potential bills to be heard during this session. Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. So on the motion to place Bill number 301-36 LS on the second reading, is there any objection? You just read the title. On the motion,
Point of inquiry, Madam Speaker. The bill is Bill
301-36 LS. Bill number 301-36 LS. The motion is to place it on the second reading. It is on the potential items list.
Thank you.
It's relative to the lease for GPA.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. And it was uploaded on just last Tuesday, so just a couple days ago. So because it didn't meet the there should be at least 5 days that this bill should be on the legislative website for, so I'm going to have to object until
There's
it's
no
been
such
up.
rule, Senator, but you
For
may object if
transparency.
you'd like. We are going to proceed with the motion. The motion is to place Bill 301 on the agenda. Is there any objection? There's an objection. All in favor of placing Bill 301-36 LS on the agenda, please raise your hand. Motion fails.
Madam Speaker, I got another bill to ask.
Please proceed, Senator San Augustine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place onto the session agenda Bill 281-36 CR, introduced by myself, as amended by the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations, and Housing, an act to appropriate $609,000 from the general fund excess revenues collected above the adopted levels of fiscal year 2022 to the Guam Election Commission for the purpose of conducting the 2022 primary election and early in-office voting. Committee report was filed and uploaded online on Thursday, May 19, 2022. It was also identified as a potential bill for this session.
On that motion to place Bill number 281-36 COR as amended by the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations, and Housing onto the session agenda, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries.
Madam Speaker,
Before we proceed, please, if there is any objection, please raise your hand. Senator San Augustine, please proceed.
Madam Speaker, I ask that we reconsider notwithstanding the House rules, the decision of the body on Bill 301-36. Do I need to read the title again? Okay, hopefully everybody's listening.
Please proceed, Senator San
Bill
Augustine.
301-36, LS, introduced by myself as amended by the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture. An act to approve the second amended and reinstated land lease agreement between Guam Power Authority and the Guam Ukadu Power LLC as lenders conditioned to fund the construction of a 198 megawatt power plant and BESS facilities located on lots number 5010-1 new-1 and 5010-1 new-1 R1 Dedadu and a related reserve facilities located on lot number 261-2 PD Guam, and to authorize the use of those properties for such purposes. Committee report was filed and uploaded on Wednesday, May 25th, 2022. And then this bill is also time sensitive. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and my colleagues.
On that motion, is there any objection? Is that an objection? There's an objection, so all in favor of placing Bill number 301-36 LS? All in favor, notwithstanding the rules? Okay, so this is just a motion to reconsider. All in favor of reconsidering the actions of the body on Bill number 301-36 LS, notwithstanding the rules, please raise your hand. Motion fails.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Torres, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to place Bill number 242-36 LS as amended by the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture. This is an act to add a new Article 2 to Chapter 40, Title 7, Guam Code Annotated, and to further add a new Section 30.400 to Chapter 30 of Title 9, Guam Code Annotated, relative to the transfer or release of family violence, sexual assault, and stalking victims from shared wireless plans. This bill was uploaded on Thursday, May 19th, and it was also listed on the potential list of potential bills for consideration at this session.
On that motion,
Point of inquiry. I didn't hear when it was posted on the website. Do you know when it was posted, Madam Speaker?
I don't know.
May 19th is what I stated.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker.
There's a motion to place Bill number 242-36 LS as amended by the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture onto the second reading of the session agenda. This bill is on the potential items list. It was noticed for this session. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We're still on motions. We're going to take a 1-minute recess. Imini 36 na legislature in Guam is back from recess. We are still in motions. Under motions, Senator Titano, you are recognized.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker. And again, Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to speak on vetoed bill 239-36. And, well, Madam Speaker, in the governor's message vetoing bill 239-36, she wrote,
I'm sorry. Let's
Okay.
just
Go
if
through
we can
formalities?
restate the
Okay,
motion so
okay.
everyone's clear what we're discussing.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the objections of Imagahagan Guahan, I move to place vetoed bill 239-36 COR in the voting file. And I would like to speak on this.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues and Madam Speaker, the governor's veto message on bill 239-36 COR, she wrote, and I quote, "The operative language for bill number 239-36 does not impose any requirement on a prospective adoption agency that does not already exist in Guam law," unquote. Madam Speaker, if the governor is referring to Public Law 36-68, which originated as legislation this legislature adopted in December of 2021, I must remind Adelup that this legislature has yet to receive a set of interim rules required by law which establishes the minimum standards governing the granting, revocation, refusal, and suspension of license for a child placement agency and the operation of a child placement agency. Despite there being no interim or any other Department of Public Health and Social Services licensures, rules, and regulations in place for private adoption agencies, I believe everyone here is well aware that there is a private company on Guam that, according to its website, claims to be the first and only adoption agency on Guam. Madam Speaker, if there is a business operating on Guam right now as an adoption agency, is it correct to assume that the business entity is already licensed by Department of Public Health and Social Services pursuant to Public Law 36-68, despite there being no rules and regulations in place? If we are to follow the governor's logic that Bill 239-36 COR does not impose any requirement on a prospective adoption agency that does not already exist in Guam law, I ask my colleagues, what existing requirement, interim or otherwise, is in place which allows for Guam's first and only adoption agency to secure a business license and operate legally? Legally. Madam Speaker, Bill 239-36 COR does not duplicate the provisions of Public Law 36-68, but rather it strengthens the new law by adding a layer of protection against those who could harm our most vulnerable children. Bill 239-36 makes clear to a private adoption agency that will not be issued a business license from DRT unless it provides an endorsement by Department of Public Health and Social Services upon meeting DPHSS's requirements. Without Bill 239-36 and without a set of interim licensures, rules, and regulations in place as required by Public Law 36-68, we as a local government are ignoring the real threats posed by bad actors who can and will take the time to find gaps in the system, spend money, and do whatever else they must do in order to circumvent our process. In her comments vetoing the measure, the governor stated, and I quote, "Bill 239-36 does not improve the adoption process or protect the children of Guam," unquote. Madam Speaker, I beg to differ with Adelup and suggest that she listen to the words of support offered by Bill 239-36, not only by DRT, but by the Deputy Director of Department of Public Health and Social Services, Mr. Terry Uggan. Mr. Uggan is a public health official who back in the summer of 2021 cautioned this legislature against recognizing private adoption companies without licensures, rules, and regulations in place, which subsequently led to proposals included in Public Law 36-68. Madam Speaker, Mr. Uggan isn't only a public health official who spent his life as a social worker and administrator at DPHSS. He is also a foster parent, and who through earlier testimony on adoption-related measures shared that, and I quote, "I am reminded of 2 young girls from Saipan that went missing and to date have never been found. I'm also reminded of the baby selling scheme that took place in the Marshall Islands targeting the poor and vulnerable," unquote. Madam Speaker, may we use this opportunity, this discussion on such an important public safety issue, to do everything in our power to protect our children by leaving no stone unturned, so that we never again have to hear of these terrible crimes against our children and our families. And may take a moment at this time, my colleagues, a moment of silence for those children who passed away in Texas. If we can all please stand and take a moment of silence to recognize those who passed. Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker, and may these angels rest in peace.
On the motion, notwithstanding the objections of Magahagan Guahan, to place vetoed bill number 239-36 COR on the voting file, is there anyone who would like to be recognized? Senator Brown, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I know there have been many issues, this year and last year we've discussed during this term with different bills that have been before us in the floor of this legislature. And it's unfortunate that we have to keep discussing this issue because there's just a few things in the process here that just need to be addressed. And it's unfortunate the political, I always say that, when politics rears its ugly head because, for the front office, it's the wrong sponsor on the bill. Let's call it for what it is. I think we all agree it's important to ensure that we do the best as leaders for our community to take care of those, as we often say, are the most vulnerable. And certainly our children, all of us, if you have children, grandchildren, even if it's not your child, there's always a high degree of compassion because you know that they're not ready to take care of themselves yet, and they depend on us to do so. And we still have so many children in our community that for whatever reason of circumstance don't have the safety of a home to call their own or loving and caring parents. And we have members of our community who have children that, unfortunately, for whatever reason, are not able to care for the children that they bring into this world. And so we, as a government, even though I often say the government is not a parent, it's not a benevolent parent that's here to take care of us, but certainly in our role as policymakers to ensure that we have laws in place and, to protect these children. And really all this comes down to, Madam Speaker, is providing the requirement of ensuring that these agency or agencies, because, we don't know that there's only one, and I hate to compare or contrast the existing agency because I've had the opportunity to meet the members of OHALA that currently have an adoption agency. I'm sure many of you have seen their ads in the paper to reach out to those in the community that need assistance or perhaps may want to put their child up for adoption or look for other assistance of care so that they can be able to parent their child. But we can't pass laws for the personalities and the people that are in place today, or just for ourselves because we happen to be in office at this time. We have to ensure that when we pass legislation, we recognize that we're putting it in place maybe for many years into the future. There were bills that were debated in this floor 50-something years ago that are still in our books, and we need to be mindful of that. And really all this bill does is simply put the requirement of having public health review any potential agency, or not agency, but I guess adoption agency, I guess that's what we call them, even though they're not a government entity, to have public health review so that we can have some comfort that public health ensures that an adoption agency, potential adoption agency, meets the requirements. Because I'm sure, you just wouldn't take your child or grandchild and put them in the hands of anybody. You're going to want to know that that's someone you trust, someone that will take care of that child and make sure they have a safe and caring environment that they're in. That's really all this is. And colleagues, for those of you that don't vote for it, then yeah, I'm gonna call you on it. Now we know why. We know why now it's political season, and certain members of this legislature don't get the comfort of, getting their bills signed and getting their bill signing and, getting the media up there to sign the bill, and aren't we just grand? That's really all this comes down to. And the play that goes on this floor because, we're only going to support only one person's bill and not the other, because that's really what this is. It isn't the subject matter. What's being proposed by this bill, when you get right down to it, really is not that complicated and really not controversial. We put all these other requirements in place, my goodness, to go get my nails done, if I want to get my hair trimmed or dyed or whatever. The person that I go to has to be licensed. They have to meet certain training requirements. They have to receive certain certifications. But we're not putting, for whatever reason, this last protective measure in place in the adoption policy so that this or any future adoption agency that comes into place can do something more than simply going up to Rev and Tax and getting a business license. And that's how this all started, because we have not had an adoption agency in the past. That's all this is coming down to. I appreciate the efforts of the sponsor, Senator Titano, because I have to tell you, she's very consistent and persistent with these issues that she feels very strongly about. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that kind of drive. Sometimes you need to break through all this other nonsense that goes on. And I just can't see any valid reason why this body would not support the override of this bill. To continue to embroil this in the political nonsense that goes on here, that goes on at Adelup, and who's left at the short end. Hopefully we don't have the situation that happened in the Marshall Islands, and that was a very tragic to read about that in our own region. That someone who came into this community, who was trusted in this community, who had a religious representation to this Marshallese community, giving the impression that somehow, some way, they were helping out these families and these children, and really, at the end of the day, they were taking these children and selling them. And that's within our neighborhood. Hopefully that's not going to happen here. Hopefully we have enough concern and policies in place to avoid that from happening, so that we know that these children who are in need of these good caring homes are going to go to good and caring homes. And that's simply adding an additional requirement, which should be a very basic fundamental requirement to the structure of the law, of having the Department of Public Health, the key agency in our government that's tasked and created by law in terms of their responsibilities and their jurisdiction, to ensure these type of reviews happen, to ensure that this potential or existing adoption agencies qualified to meet these needs of these children, and doing it in a safe manner, in a responsible manner, in a caring manner. That's simply what we would like to see. So I certainly am, Madam Speaker, very supportive of the override of this bill. And while there's many other pieces of legislation we've addressed and will continue addressed on this floor, we should have no comfort ourselves if we don't put this requirement in place to ensure the safety and well-being of our children here on Guam. With that, Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the override of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. On the motion, notwithstanding the objections of Imagahagan Guahan, to place veto bill number 239-36 COR on the voting file. Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Just short, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just want to note that adoption rules are required under Public Law 36-68, and rules are for everyone, not just adoption agencies, but doctors and individuals, anyone involved in the placement of a child. All Bill 239 does is say that adoption agencies must be licensed according to that law. Just want to share that for the record, Madam Speaker.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be recognized on the motion?
Point of information, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, that is absolutely not true. Bill,
This is not a debate. If there's an information that you think is necessary to relate the information.
yes, I do, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, because of that information not being true, there is nothing.
Senator,
Sorry, I'm just parting a point of information.
what is the information you would like to convey?
That Bill 239 requires that an individual must be approved first by Department of Public Health in order to get a business license at Rev and Tax. It's as simple as that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the motion, is there anyone else who'd like to be recognized on the motion? If not, then the sponsor may close. All right, she's waiving a closing, so we are now going to vote on the motion. The motion is, notwithstanding the objections of Imagahagan Guahan, that vetoed bill number 239-36 COR be placed on the voting file. Is there any objection? There's an objection. So all in favor, please raise your hand. Motion fails. All right, we are still on motions. Is there any other motion? Is there any other motion? If not, we will proceed to the second reading file. All right, so my mistake. We will proceed to the legislative concurrences. Is there a motion for a nomination before we proceed? Vice Speaker or Senator Shelton, is there a motion for a nomination? All right, then we'll proceed. Assistant Majority Leader Shelton, you are recognized.
So to Asmasi, Madam Speaker, I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Education, Self-Determination, and Historic Preservation, Infrastructure, Border Safety, Federal and Foreign Affairs, and Maritime Transportation the nomination of Conchita S.N. Titano to serve as a member of the Port Authority of Guam Board of Directors with the recommendation to do confirm.
All right, I think the motion we need is to place on legislative concurrences. Not yet in the voting.
To Asmasi, Madam Speaker, I move to place the nomination of Conchita S.N. Titano to serve as a member of the Port Authority of Guam Board of Directors on the session agenda.
All right, on that motion, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Any other motions? If not, now we are on legislative concurrences, and Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place the nomination of Lola E. Leon Guerrero to serve as Director of the Bureau of Statistics and Plans from the Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation, Labor, Procurement, Statistics, Research, and Planning to the voting file with a recommendation to do confirm.
On that motion, is there any objection? If there is any objection, please raise your hand. Seeing no objection, motion carries. Assistant Majority Leader Shelton, you are recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Education, Self-Determination, and Historic Preservation, Infrastructure, Border Safety, Federal and Foreign Affairs, and Maritime Transportation the nomination of Conchita S. Titano to serve as a member of the Port Authority of Guam Board of Directors with the recommendation to do confirm.
On that motion, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, please raise your, seeing no objection, motion carries. We are now on the consent calendar. There are no items, so we will proceed to the second reading. First item on second reading is Bill number 242-36 LS. Senator Torres, you are recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker. I move to place Bill number 242-36 LS as amended by the Committee on Health.
I'm sorry, Senator, my mistake. We are on Bill number 243-36 LS.
Thank you.
My apologies.
Thank you. 1 second, please. Thank you again. I move to place Bill number 243-36 LS as amended by the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture, which was introduced by myself and co-sponsored by Speaker Therese M. Terlahi, Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munya-Barnes, and Senators Amanda L. Shelton, James C. Moylan, Jose Pito Terlahi, V. Anthony Atta, Frank Blas Jr., Clinton E. Rigel, Joe S. San Augustin, Christopher M. Duenas, and Sabina F. Paris into the third reading file. This is an act to amend Section 2510A, 25.15A, numbers 4 through 7, 25.20A, 4 through 7, 25.25A3, and 25.30A2, all of Chapter 25, Title 9, Guam Code Annotated, relative to defining consent, revising the language of mentally defective to mentally impaired, and expanding the definition of mental incapacitation and physically helpless. And I wish to speak on the measure further.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Bill 243 closes a gaping loophole in Guam law, one that allows perpetrators to walk freely simply because their victims consumed alcohol on their own. Right now, our criminal sexual conduct statutes say that if you voluntarily consume an intoxicating substance prior to being raped, you are not considered mentally incapacitated, regardless of a significant impairment in your ability to communicate. Rather, our law's mental incapacitation standard and the protections that come with it are reserved for only those that have been drugged or intoxicated against their will. This has commonly been known as the intoxication loophole. Guam's physically helpless statute doesn't help much either. Under current law, only individuals that are asleep or unconscious or physically unable to communicate unwillingness are considered helpless. While it is possible that individuals can be prosecuted under these standards, our narrow definitions can bar prosecution if a victim didn't say no or indicate a lack of consent. Madam Speaker, this has tragically resulted in too many victims never getting their day in court. According to testimony proffered by former prosecutor and head of Family and Sex Crimes Unit, Christine Tenorio, she stated that there are two different ways to commit criminal sexual conduct. One is by force or coercion. But the way Guam law is written right now, as it is interpreted by People v. Tenorio, which is a 2007 Guam Supreme Court case is you have to say no or indicate lack of consent in order for the case to be even charged. If victims were too drunk and they couldn't say no, we actually could not charge the case. So when I was at the AG's office, so many of these cases went uncharged because of this loophole, unquote. Christine Tenorio. Bill 243 solves this by expanding our mentally incapacitated statute to include any person under the influence of a substance that renders them incapable of consenting. This would effectively recognize voluntarily intoxicated individuals as the victims they are. The word voluntarily was further added to Section 6B to ensure that mentally incapacitated clearly captures those under the influence of an intoxicating substance of their own volition. Recognizing that there can be no culpability without a guilty mind, Bill 243 also maintains the known standard, meaning that prosecution must prove that the defendant knew or had reason to know of the complainant's incapacitated state to be held culpable. This is especially important in cases of mutual intoxication. Although Attorney Tenorio noted at the hearing that she has not encountered one instance of this taking place throughout her entire career at the Attorney General's office. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, Bill 243 would add a definition of consent for the first time ever to the Guam Code Annotated. Under this definition, a person must use words or overt actions indicating a freely given present agreement. Consent does not mean the existence of a prior or current social relationship or that the victim failed to resist a particular sexual act. The definition also makes clear that a person who is mentally incapacitated or physically helpless cannot consent to a sexual act. By adopting an affirmative definition in which consent must be clearly communicated and not implied, we create a legal shift in our community's understanding of consent, sexual activity, and bodily autonomy. And hopefully, we also bring justice to survivors of sexual assault who could not find it under current Guam law. Madam Speaker, a growing number of states are recognizing the need to protect the voluntarily intoxicated, and I ask my colleagues to add Guam to that list and to send a clear message to our community that alcohol is never an invitation to rape, that those who prey on the severely intoxicated will be punished, and that if our victims have the strength to come forward, the law will be on their side to support them. Sijuos Masi.
Sijuos Masi. Senator, on the bill 243, Vice Speaker, you're recognized.
Undankala Sijuos Masi, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to speak and rise in support of Bill 243-36 LS. And I'd like to thank the sponsor for giving me the opportunity to be a part of the co-sponsorship. And Madam Speaker, I believe that the intent of this bill is to update the criminal sexual conduct laws, recognizing voluntary intoxication as being mentally incapacitated and unable to consent to intercourse, and further defining consent, making it clear that consent does not mean simply having a social relationship between the actor and the victim, or the victim failed to resist the sexual act. What this does is it defines consent as freely giving present agreement to perform a sex act with an actor, which does not include having or having had a prior social relationship between the actor and victim, and it does not include the victim not resisting the sex act. So this intent and what it does, Madam Speaker, also is it includes into the definition of mentally incapacitated as a person who voluntarily, under the influences of any substance to a degree that renders them incapable of consenting or incapable of appreciating, understanding, or controlling the person's conduct. Madam Speaker, if this bill were to get the votes by my colleagues, this bill would take effect immediately if the governor signs it. And I just want to know that, as noted by the sponsor, this bill also cites, like she noted, the Minnesota Supreme Court case where felony rape conviction was overturned because the victim was intoxicated by her own will due to their interpretation of the state's mental incapacitation definition. And Guam has a similar mental incapacitation definition to Minnesota. I will also note, Madam Speaker, that other jurisdictions recognize involuntary intoxication in their sexual assault codes, and maybe just re-stress that Arizona, Arkansas, California, Idaho, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Montana, Oregon, South Carolina, Washington, and Wisconsin. And Madam Speaker, I really hope our colleagues take the opportunity to support this effort. I think we had 12 members, but I think this is an important bill to realize. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to rise in support of this legislation. Sinamasi.
Sinamasi. On the bill? Anyone else on the bill?
At this time, colleagues, I will recognize our speaker, Speaker Teresa Light. You're recognized on the bill.
Thank you very much. I rise in support of this bill. It's an excellent bill, and it does make a significant change to Guam's laws that are intended, and we are very much expecting to be successful in increasing prosecution of rape. That's really the bottom line. Rape is the most underreported crime. And it's one of the hardest things, I am sure, for victims to try to go through with the prosecution. This bill is going to help that because it makes a huge shift in how these cases are prosecuted. It changes what used to be victims had to prove that they said no. That's the current law. Victims have to prove that they said no. This bill is going to change that, and it's going to ensure that perpetrators have to prove that someone consented. Someone said yes, and their definition of consent here means by words or overt actions. So this is an excellent tool for prosecutors, and we hope that they are going to be able to use it to put these perpetrators away. No more getting confused about who was drunk or who was not. Especially voluntarily drinking is no excuse anymore. You're going to be held responsible and accountable for what you do under that condition. I want to commend, of course, the sponsor, but I also want to commend, the bill. It was very good. I think it was made better with the help of the the former Assistant Attorney General Christine Tenorio, who is a former Chief of Prosecution for sex crimes. These are not, I cannot imagine that as a career. And we've had many hearings with these prosecutors of sex crimes because there have been many bills that have come through the legislature regarding sex crimes, where we've tried all kinds of different ways, and over many years, in fact, to find ways of how we're going to make these crimes stick, make these people who are committing these crimes be punished accordingly, or rehabilitated if possible. And we have yet to see that that is possible. But we have put into statute prior laws that demand that the courts no longer release unless they can prove with an affirmative test that there is not a risk of recommitting the same sexual conduct crime. So, again, a lot of good work went into this bill, and I am just grateful that we are going to have a tool, and I want to make it extremely clear while I have this platform that consent is the words or actions by a person indicating a freely given present agreement to perform a particular sexual act with the actor. And as you stated, Vice Speaker, it does not mean the existence of a prior or current social relationship. That is not consent. Marriage is not consent to rape. Being your boyfriend or your girlfriend is not a consent to rape. And this now is going to give these prosecutors, when they take these cases to trial, these victims are no longer going to be, put on trial for whether they were drunk or not, whether the actor was drunk or not, and then he has an excuse. No longer. This bill is passed, which I hope my colleagues will consider and support. The defense is going to have to show that consent was given. And I expect that will be difficult to prove because we know these things take place in under dark circumstances. But so again, thank you to those who assisted with the bill. Thank you for the author of the bill. And we're wishing prosecutors best of luck with this and that we were going to have some success in the prosecution of these cases. Jesus Masi, Madam Speaker.
Buen provecho, Speaker Terlahi. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on the main motion? If not, Senator Torres, would you like to close?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and to the retiring speaker, our good speaker. We couldn't have articulated it better. The need, the attention that was given, the type of effort that went into crafting this bill, and done so by people who were at the very heart of it, that were seeing the obstacles to prosecution in many of these cases. And hopefully these sorts of measures will be the cure to the systemic problems that we have, not Band-Aid fixes, but things that also change the mindset of our community in terms of what is acceptable behavior and what behavior will not be tolerated and will in fact be convicted in a court of law. So I just want to thank everybody for their support on this bill, and I'd like to make a motion to add Senator Talina Nelson as one of the co-sponsors.
On the motion to add co-sponsor, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries.
And with that, I move that this be placed on the third reading voting file.
On the motion to place Bill number 243-36 LS on the voting file, is there any objection? On the third reading file, is there any objection? Here, seeing no objection, motion carries. We're now on Bill number 244-36 LS. Senator Torres, you are recognized.
Sidus Maasi, Madam Speaker. I move to place Bill number 244-36 LS as amended by the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture, introduced by myself, and co-sponsored by Speaker Teresa M. Terlahi, Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munya-Barnes, and Senators Amanda L. Shelton, James C. Moylan, Jose Piro Terlahi, V. Anthony Ada, Frank Blas Jr., Clinton E. Rogel, Joe San Augustine, Christopher M. Duenas, and Sabina F. Perez into the third reading file. This is an act to add a new Chapter 163 to Title 8 Guam Code Annotated relative to establishing a Bill of Rights for victims of sexual assault, and to cite this act as the Survivors' Bill of Rights Act of 2022. And I wish to speak on the measure further.
Please proceed.
Sidus Maasi. Madam Speaker, if enacted, Bill 244 would adopt a standard Bill of Rights for sexual assault victims in Guam. While the General Crime Victims' Rights Act of 2004 has resulted in significant advances for crime victims and survivors, victims of sexual violence, more than other victims, are more likely to be blamed or assumed to be fabricating the crime or taken less seriously than their injuries warrant. Because of this, victims are sometimes discouraged or may feel discouraged from proceeding with their complaints. So this bill is an important way to communicate to them that they are not responsible for the commission of crimes against them. As Ms. Brianna Duenas, the president of the University of Guam Social Work Student Alliance, eloquently stated at the public hearing on this bill, she stated, Bill 244 recognizes the human dignity and worth of the individual by affording the victim the opportunity to access necessary resources to prevent further issues to the victim's mental and physical well-being, unquote. To this end, Bill 244 guarantees a few fundamental rights, such as the right to advocacy, the right to informative rape kit procedures and notification, and the retention of all rights, regardless of whether assault is reported to law enforcement or not. It also allows victims of sexual violence the ability to easily locate their rights in one chapter, which will hopefully encourage this and support the reporting of these crimes. Bill 242, as amended, has been amended to incorporate some of the recommendations made by our stakeholders at the hearing. My office further made changes to mirror the Federal Sexual Assault Survivors' Rights Act under 18 U.S. Code Section 3772. And we did this to ensure that we are consistent with the requirements under the Survivors' Bill of Rights in the States Act, which is a national legislation that encourages states to adopt local protections. Should this federal bill become law, the states and territories that provide these rights would be eligible for additional federal funding equivalent to a percentage of the formula grant funding that they already receive under the Violence Against Women Act, which is a STOP grant program from the Department of Justice. I want to end this, this opening by thanking those that testified on behalf of Guam's victims, my co-sponsors for their support, and you especially, Madam Speaker, for your committee leadership and your swift action on this and other bills. And it is my sincere desire that we bring this measure one step closer to becoming Guam law. Sidus Maasi.
Sidus Maasi. On the bill, Vice Speaker Munya-Barnes, you are recognized.
Sidus Maasi, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to speak and support this measure, Bill number 244-36 LS, and I'd like to thank the sponsor of this legislation for allowing me to be the third co-sponsor on this. And again, the intent of this measure is to establish the Sexual Assault Victims Bill of Rights. Of course, who does it affect? The CSC victims, and what its intent, Madam Speaker, is that the Sexual Assault Bill of Rights will not take away from the already established criminal victims' rights of 2004. Sexual assaults are afforded the following: and to be treated seriously with dignity and compassion, and to be notified of existing medical, counseling, or other services for CSC victims, whether or not reported to law enforcement, to be free from any suggestions that the victim is responsible for the crimes committed against them or being blamed for being sexually assaulted, to be free from the suggestion of reporting the crime as well as not reporting the crime to avoid unwanted publicity, to access all services at no cost of Guam Sexual Assault Response Team, to be informed of their right to be confidentially or anonymously tested for AIDS or HIV or any other viruses, to not be prevented or charged from receiving medical forensics examination, to have forensic medical evidence preserved without the charge for the max statute of limitation or 20 years, whichever is shorter, including being given dates on the status of evidence, written notification from GPD of the destruction of rape kits, to choose whether to participate in any investigation, to receive treatment in their native language, to inform or specialized mental health services, protection from further violence, and other government services, to be apprised of the availability and processes by which to seek a protective order, and where this would do is notices of these rights, Madam Speaker, will be published and posted at hospital emergency departments, police stations, sexual violence services organizations, the Guam Department of Education, Guam Community College, the University of Guam, and all other appropriate places to inform victims. And Madam Speaker, I'd like to also note for the record, if passed by this august body and signed by the governor, it will take effect immediately. And I want to thank the sponsor again for, looking and making sure that we take care of those who have been violated, these victims. And I personally believe in my heart that this is a very good bill. Madam Speaker, I did work for the Public Defender's Office for over 15 years, and you would think that something like this would already be in our books, but I think that this legislation is definitely needed, and I hope and I pray that our colleagues will support this bill unanimously. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and rise in support of this measure 244-36 LS. Sizos Masi, Sana Masi.
Senator Mossy. On the bill, is there any other senator who'd like to be recognized on the bill? If not, the sponsor may close.
Madam Speaker, I this time would like to move to place Talina Cruz Nelson as an additional co-sponsor.
On the motion to add a sponsor, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries.
And I'd also like to move to place this on the third reading voting file.
On that motion to place bill number 244-36 LS as amended by the committee on the voting file on the third reading, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries.
Sizos Maasi.
Agumas, Senator. Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, Sizos Masi, at this time, Madam Speaker, I'd like to make a motion that we just take a break and come back at 2 p.m. this afternoon.
On the motion to recess until 2 p.m., is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Recess until 2.